everyone. Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntire and Todd Erzen. I am Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at Freedom Project Academy. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about the recent mayoral, I said in English, I think, primary out there in what used to be known as America's greatest city, where an open Islamunist may indeed be its next mayor. Now, where do you think these voters learn these ideas? Well, from the communist, Marxist, social liberation countries that they came from here, in many cases illegally. But also from our schools that have been brainwashing our kids all the way through graduation. You know, the stats speak for themselves. Millions of kids can't read, write, or do math at a grade level, forcing colleges to dumb down curriculum to keep their enrollment up. But their self-esteem is high. And they know what Pride Month is. That's where Freedom Project Academy comes in. They've perfected the art of online learning over the last 15 years, offering live, anytime, homeschool courses for students from kindergarten all the way through high school. Built on Judeo-Christian values, FPA is dedicated to the mastery of subject matter, where students learn how to think, not what to think. They read full books, write in cursive, do all the kinds of things, study the full scope of history that includes it, that improves and incentivizes. I can't talk today, Aaron McIntire.
That's my life, bro.
That improves and incentivizes. I'm going to take a course in phonics at FPA this summer, I think. Good grief.
Hooked on phonics, working for me.
Yes. Just go to freedomforschool.com. They're pretty dope over there. Had my own kid enrolled over there. I've seen firsthand what they can do. You can save 15% off of all their courses when you use the code STEVE15. That's code STEVE15, Steve15, for 15% off at freedomforschool.com. FOR, freedomforschool.com. Again, that's freedomforschool.com. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, I know a lot of you got a copy 2 years ago of the best-selling book Daniel Horowitz and I wrote, Rise of the Fourth Reich. One of the most wrenching stories in that book is what happened to Grace Shara and the fact that she was essentially murdered in an American hospital. Her father, Scott, was able to get her case to trial. Unfortunately, got a very disappointing verdict, and he's going to join us here at the bottom of the hour for that conversation. Speaking of disappointment, I'm just going to lay out what's been laid out to us over the last 6 months when it comes to Epstein. Next segment, or top of the hour, segment 1 and hour 2. I'm going to lay this all out. All right. And then I'm just going to throw the floor open. Explain this. Explain this chain of events. How is this possibly where we are with this? By the way, post just a little while ago from our patriarch here, Glenn Beck at the Blaze. In fact, let me just go ahead and just read it verbatim. This is nuts. How is it Pam Bondi still has a job? This is the worst rollout of information I have ever seen. From the guy that invented chalkboards, whiteboards, has probably produced more philosophical, historical, analytical content, possibly more than any singular person in the history of the American modern right has. So in other words, he's seen and done some information rollouts. He's a veteran in this space. Fair?
Yeah.
Quote, "This is the worst rollout of information I have ever seen." We're going to go back and rehash some of this rollout over the last 6 months, and I'm going to just let Todd and Aaron let it rip. Explain this. How do we possibly explain this? All right, that's coming up in the next hour of the show. Pop Culture Tuesday. Oh, boy. Why are we focusing so much on the men on this show? Well, we're going to go back about 50 years of data on the state of American manhood 50 years ago compared to today. And yikes. So it's a Good News Tuesday here on the Steve Deace Show. So let's lead it off with the best news of all, of course, Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the ratio of questions to answers is way out of whack. Yesterday, we mentioned that 10-hour surveillance video the Department of Justice released, purportedly proving that no one entered the cell area where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself. Well, there's a problem with that. There's an entire minute missing from the footage from 11:59 p.m. to midnight on August 9th of 2019. Secondly, as our own Jason Buttrill noted, the view of the surveillance footage doesn't even include Epstein's cell based on findings from a report from the Office of the Inspector General. Nevertheless, at the White House yesterday, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says they're basically considering this case closed.
The Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's transparency.
Last week in Iowa, President Trump raised eyebrows when he said this.
And we're working on legislation right now. Susie, right? We're working on legislation right now where farmers, look, they know better. They work with them for years. You had cases where, not here, but just even over the years, where people have worked for on a farm for 14, 15 years, and they get thrown out pretty viciously, and we can't do it. We got to work with the farmers and people that have hotels and leisure properties too. We're going to work with them, and we're going to work very strong and smart, and we're going to put you in charge. We're going to make you responsible, and I think that that's going to make a lot of people happy. Now, serious radical right people, who I also happen to like a lot, they may not be quite as happy, but they'll understand.
Since then, there have been whispers of a silent pressure campaign in D.C. to push Trump into doing amnesty for illegals in the ag and hospitality industries. But Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins says this morning,
I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly.
Yesterday in Los Angeles, large-scale ICE raids attracted the attention of Mayor Karen Bass, who showed up to gum up the works.
My comment is they need to leave, and they need to leave right now.
U.S. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino says,
the federal government is not leaving L.A. I don't work for Karen Bass. The federal government doesn't work for Karen Bass. We're going to be here till that mission's accomplished, as I said, and better get used to us now, because this is going to be normal very soon. A federal judge in Massachusetts has attempted to block the part of the One Big Beautiful bill that was passed just last week, which defunds Planned Parenthood for a year. District Judge Indira Talwani said in her temporary restraining order, quote, looks like I'm God and Queen now, suck on D. The baby murder will continue, end quote. Pop culture world is abuzz over the release of Superman later this week. Actor and producer Sean Gunn, brother of Superman director James Gunn, is making some people nervous about the wokeness of the movie with comments like these.
It is exactly what the movie is about, I think, that we support our people, we love our immigrants. Yes, Superman is an immigrant, and yes, the people that we support in this country are immigrants, and if you don't like that, then you're not American.
And finally, this from the Babylon Bee. Epstein list hangs itself moments before release, and that's what happened while we were away.
Can you put that picture right back up from the Babylon Bee there, Aaron? Is that possible? Can you do that? Because there's something in that photo I just noticed. People might want to check that out. Let me know when you've got that here, because I think we need to, because I want to make sure I saw what I saw when you had that up the first time. Because I could have sworn I saw something there in the background.
There we go.
There it is. All right. There, yep, you can see it right behind that crate. All right. Yep, I thought that was him. That's the CEO of Warner Brothers. Right behind that crate there. Yeah. You can see a shadow right there. That's the CEO of Warner Brothers thinking we have done a masterful rollout of this movie. I mean, we've been on message, we've been on point, all right? And some douchebag who's in the film for 90 seconds because he's the brother of our director pops off, and now that's all half of America is going to talk about heading into this weekend. You can see right there, that's the CEO of Warner Brothers right there in the background. So just wanted to make sure Hashtag CEO of Warner Brothers didn't kill himself. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you're struggling with too much chronic pain, that's too much inflammation in your joints, well, folks, this is where Relief Factor comes in. Just ask Deborah Ann out of Massachusetts. All right, she was struggling from that chronic pain with severe hip pain, and then she started up after taking so much toll on her. She gave Relief Factor a shot. Right? She summed it up best when she said, I absolutely love how I'm feeling now. She is one of the 70% of the 1 million plus people that have tried Relief Factor's 3-week quick start over the years and saw such great results that they stuck with the product long term. All right. So why don't you see, if you don't see a difference in your chronic pain in 3 weeks or less, you can't beat it. It's just $20 to find out when you go to relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. Check it out at relieffactor.com. All right. We're going to have way more to say on the rollout part of this next hour. The information that came out today, and for those, I know a lot of you are going to know. I mean, Glenn is the son of the solar system here, and Jason Buttrell's a fixture in Glenn's world. But for the few of you that don't know, Jason Buttrell is Glenn's chief researcher, which is another way of saying, given the amount of research and information that Glenn is uniquely responsible for rolling out over the course of his career. All right. So if this is whom Glenn relies on as his right-hand man in this area, safe to then also probably project Jason Buttrell is among the most well-researched people in the entire conservative media. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. So this is also a man with DOD experience, a lot of different experience in particularly the realm that we're talking about here. Okay. I want to go to another post that he put up there this morning as well. Quote, and any official claiming that this video, the one that Aaron referred to in his montage, right? Any official claiming that this video is proof that Epstein killed himself is, quote, clueless or lying. I mean, this is the top researcher at our entire company. I don't know what to say. Okay. Jason goes on to say, even despite the one missing minute, even despite that, even a child could figure out how to hug the wall in the area next to the stairs and stay out of view of the camera or on the way to Epstein's cell. The stairs leading up to Epstein's cell are not fully in view. An inmate near Epstein's cell could have been let out to kill him and there would be no view. Now listen to this. If this isn't incredulous enough, listen to this. Jason says, count them 4 camera angles would have given more context. But they were not all recording to the DVR. What is the benign, innocent explanation for that? This is the most high-profile prisoner in the entire American Bureau of Prisons in 2019. What could possibly be the reason? Okay, one malfunction of many? Hey, man, stuff happens. 4? 4 of them. 4. Jason concludes, and this was the video referenced by the FBI that is the, quote, convincing evidence? So here is where I am at with this. I probably have too much pre-existing regard for Dan Bongino to see this objectively. I mean, if this was a court case, I just have to recuse myself. I can't see it objectively, and because I see it within the context of how much I respect the work that Dan has done in our movement up until taking this job. And also understanding everything I said about when he took the job at the time still stands. He doesn't need any of this. Could have just kept doing what he was, has a nice pad in Florida, a big time show. And if some of you want to come to me and say, yeah, if he was still doing that show right now and wasn't working there, I think he'd be saying the stuff he's saying right now. And I think that's fair. And that comes with the territory of taking the job that he took. All right. But in the flow chart here of names, he's last. He's at the bottom of the list. All right. He's the deputy director. He's not making any decisions here that are ultimate and final. So because of that, and because I've got a soft spot, because of the respect he has earned from me, I'm just going to recuse myself where he is concerned. I can't see it objectively. Kash Patel, I don't know. The most exposure I've ever had to him was the interview I watched in total that he gave to Rogan about a month ago, which he's already contradicted himself from what he just said. Actually, it wasn't a month ago. It was just a few weeks ago, right? He's already, or maybe it was a month ago. It was around Memorial Day weekend. So he's already contradicted himself from what he said to Joe Rogan. And Pam Bondi and the way this is ran out. Now, see, I'm doing this in the order of the chain of command here. She's really in charge of this entire department. Pardon me. Now, I know there's a handful of you that are going to be like, well, you know, you left out the person who's really running the show because you don't want to criticize Trump. I think you're right. I mean, that's a well-known characteristic of the Steve Deace Show that I think we have cemented over the course of our existence. A lack of willingness to, when we think it is necessary, to criticize Donald Trump. Everyone knows this about us. I mean, this is very well said. I mean, this is why I'm down at Mar-a-Lago for cocktail parties every weekend. I mean, this is just a very well-known thing. This is why when we got invited to the White House, frankly, we were all shocked, okay? And then we kept it a secret until the day we got there, because we know there are people in the White House that would like, no way, Jose, allow this, right?
Yeah.
It's very well known. It's very well known that, I mean, I just turned into just a puddle of mush.
Not supporting him in 2 primaries is the greatest support you can give a man, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very well known. Everyone knows this about me, all right? But setting my past aside, number one, who is doing more for our side collectively right now than Donald Trump is? Got real quiet in here. In fact, who would even be number 2? Do you even know who number 2 would be?
At the federal level?
Exactly. So maybe some of you have never ran a company and some of you have never been a parent, all right? But you have to see things in the context, in the perspective of the moment and the moments leading up to said things. That is if you want to be a good CEO of a company and a good parent. Pretty much everything good that has happened in Washington, D.C. so far this year has Donald Trump's fingerprints on it. Amen?
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not the same standard, number one. And then number 2, so to me, that's an objective fact. Number 2 is where we're getting a subjective opinion, but I'll layer mine. I just don't think Trump responds to that level of criticism and instead doubles down. I think the best way to reach Donald Trump, just keeping it real, I think the best way to reach Donald Trump is to point out the people around him that are failing him. Because it also rallies his base to your cause. If you go at Donald Trump on, you suck, you sold us out again, what'll happen is, because of what I just said, point number 1, no one's doing more for us now than Donald Trump is, right? So what'll happen is, you may get off on it. It may be good for you. It's a terrible tactic. And I'd say this to any friend of mine who thinks that does this, and I have said this to friends of mine who do this. This is why you're not listened to. And this is why they move on. When you do that, you divide his base. And you need his base unified around you to get his attention. Like on the amnesty issue, for example. Notice what got the White House to move on this in the last 24 hours. Because a lot of the whispering campaign is that Brooke Rollins is actually the one, as the Secretary of Ag, who's been pushing for this, because who was going to get the amnesty exemption that Trump announced? The ag community. And in which state did he announce it? The biggest ag state in the country, our own. So people did the math on this. Plus, she has a history of being kind of soft on this issue, if you look at her history in the past. So people did the math, pinned it on her. She starts feeling the heat. So she comes out and clarifies things. See, that's actually the effective way of doing things. What happened is you united Trump's base, because Trump's base, take it from a guy who's got a little experience here. Remember the day after the COVID shutdowns when I came in here and told you guys that day before the show started? We're done here. We're not going to last much longer because I'm not going to go along with this. Do you remember this?
Of course.
And I'm not going to go along with this. And I just got done fighting Trump and his base to win in 2016. I don't have the energy to do it again. And I'm convinced this is the biggest scam that's ever been unleashed on us in my lifetime. And I'm not going along with it. And so I'm going to push back on it hard. And we're going to divide our own base on us again. And our show's finished. I told you guys that, right?
Well, that was
I told you, update your resumes. I wasn't even lamenting. I was just telling you straight up, hey, I'm going all in on this. The Lord has made it clear to me. I am literally on this earth for this moment right here. Go all in, regardless of the consequences. We had these conversations before we went on the air that day, remember?
That was a great day for me.
And I just said, I hope you guys are, I'm sorry about your families, because listen, I got one to feed too, but I'm not giving in on this one. He's wrong. I'm convinced of it, and I'm going in. All right? But here's what we learned over the course of that time. Because we largely presented it as trying to save the Trump administration from himself, a weird thing happened. Our show not only didn't end, it grew 400% in 1 year. So it's just not an effective tactic. You might gain the acclaim of a non-con with the gator in his bio and DeSantis 38, DeSantis 42, okay, in his bio, all right, and in between drinks of Code Red in his mom's basement, because apparently his life is just so valuable that he has to keep it himself hidden. You might gain the acclaim of him and his 75 followers, but it's just not an effective tactic. Do I enjoy confronting people? Is that something that seems like I'm just not very good at and I don't get off on and I'm kind of sheepish about? You guys get that impression of me? Everyone says that too, right? If anything, confronting people is my reflexive action. It is not in my nature to try subtlety. People claim, you hear that a lot. Boy, that Steve Deace guy, cunning, master of subtlety. You hear that a lot, right?
All the time.
All the time. Not at all! That's why I'd love to be called crafty one day, because crafty I'm not. All right, I'm as subtle as a kick in the knee cap, okay? So it's just not an effective tactic. It doesn't work with him because you can't build the critical mass you need to actually move him. It may make you feel good, and it might make the base of people that you are trying to play to who are really irrelevant and have no influence. It might make them feel good that you're some kind of uber principled person, but it's just not an effective tactic. We've had Donald Trump here for 10 years. I think we kind of know the ecosystem by now. So you can choose to learn it and be effective in it, or you can just deny it and render yourself irrelevant. That's the choice you have to make in this business. It doesn't work. You divide his base because they also say, hey, I'm going to rally around my guy because he's the only one doing something for me. And they'll defend him, where if you didn't make it about him, but you made it about the issue, they'd actually support you because they agree with you on the issue too. But you chose to make Trump the issue, and now you've divided the very people that you need to rally to get his attention. You see what I'm saying here? So it has nothing to do with any kind of grift. I'm not on any kind of payroll. Maybe it does for some other people. But for me, after being here for 10 years in this world, I've just observed it doesn't work. And the best tactic is to show him that whatever he's put in place around him is failing him, because it doesn't cause the half of the very base that you need to get on your side to get his attention to turn against you, because now you're seen as disloyal because he's the general we have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So here's the reality. Not to mention, it's a unique situation with the Department of Justice. It is in the executive branch, but it is meant to be an independent arm of the executive branch. How many times did Trump fire Robert Mueller during the Russia collusion hoax? 0. Why? Because of what I just said. So he does get to appoint the head of that department, but it is meant to be an independent department. And here's the thing, you want it to be. Just not an independent department under the control of Pam Bondi. Maybe literally anyone else. And as much as we love Caroline Leavitt, that was a load of bull. But her job at times like this is to feed us a load of bull, frankly. And just like we saw, that's the thing with Trump. You cannot overreact. Everything's a negotiation, man. That's the other thing you have to realize about the Trump ecosystem. Are we negotiating? And the answer is always. Seemed pretty certain up there at the Iowa State Fair. Yeah, we're going to have to do some amnesty, I guess, guys. 3 days later, complete and total blowback. Yeah, we're not doing any of that, guys. Everything's in a... By the way, that doesn't mean the issue's dead either and closed. You got to stay on it. It might come back. Everything's a negotiation. How have some of you still don't want to learn how this is operating? We're 10 years into this now. It doesn't do any good to go right at him. It might vent your frustration, might make you feel good, and might get the limited people still tuning into you to feel great about how you're principled you still are. But it's not relevant to actually moving an agenda. It's not what works. There are other politicians that going right at him, it does work. So guess what I do with them? I go right at them. In this case, it doesn't work. The same instinct that causes Trump to have the same kind of guile and determination that makes most men buckle is the same instinct that has him not respond to coming right at him. So you have to be more subtle. And you have to make the case to him that what's happening to him is failing him, not that he himself is the failure. Then you'll get his attention and you'll unite his base behind your message. What's happening right here is a failure. I'll go back to what I said yesterday. This is the kind of stuff that causes you to lose civil wars. At some point, Elon Musk is going to figure out, like I said yesterday, this is a much better issue to form a new party on than debt. This captures way more imaginations. This has way more people interested. This is an unforced error. And it cannot stand. And I don't think it will. I think in the next 48 hours, some kind of clarification is coming, or figure out something else we've wanted them to give us that they haven't given us yet, and they'll give us that now to try to detract from whatever's going on here. Because this isn't going to work. You're committing the cardinal sin here. People tolerate politicians who lie and who are corrupt, especially if they like them and they're on their side. I mean, our baseline expectations for politicians, just as a default setting, is pretty low. But the one thing you can't do that people don't tolerate is playing them for schmucks and suckers, insulting them, playing them for fools. And that's what's happening here. This is going to have to get fixed. I have no idea how you can trot Pam Bondi out there another day. I just don't have any clue how that's a figure with literally any credibility standing at all. At all. This is insulting. It's not just untrue, it's insulting, is what it is. Let me stop there and get you guys a take. Go ahead.
I mean, what does it say when a best case scenario to a story is gross incompetence?
Yeah, see, that's where we're at, unfortunately. Yeah.
I mean, that whole you're either stupid or you're lying. Well, you made the point yesterday, and rightly so. This has finally been an administration that seems to know how to get out of its own way. But that's all it does here. See, that's what doesn't really make any sense. So I think Occam's razor points much closer to the direction of lying, and then you have to say why. And I do think maybe it's kind of like the big, beautiful bill. It's like this, it's not perfect. It's grotesque in many ways. It's not supposed to work this way, but it's the reality we live in. And as I've said about Donald Trump, let's all be groovy together. Let's move forward. I think maybe all the way from the top, that's the thought on this thing. Unbearing all this, what's it going to do? What's it going to do? Is it really going to bring justice? We need to move forward. I think that's as likely as anything else. That's stomach churning, but I think it's possible.
The DOJ never claimed that 9-hour and 59-minute surveillance video showed Epstein's cell. They just said that it showed the common area. However, I just want you to think about this. What are the odds that the audiovisual staff at that New York prison were just kind of sitting on their hands for who knows how long, or it just happened to go out? The videos that were showing his cell just happened to go out. What are the odds that happened? They're purportedly the only ones in the building. And then finally, once we do get surveillance footage of cameras that were working, just some sort of administrative mistake omitted a minute of footage. What are the odds of that?
I don't know. Ben Shapiro says it's settled, guys, and take your next booster. So I think we're good here, right? We're good? Moving on. Smart Set has spoken. Hey, folks, I've got two questions for you. Have you considered how your investments might unknowingly fund policies undermining your traditional American values? And then number 2, are your hard-earned investment dollars being used to oppose the Trump administration's agenda and the principles that you probably just voted for in the last election? Your investment should work as hard as you do. Let me just speak to my fellow believers for a second, because many Christian investors don't realize that their portfolios include companies funding causes that directly contradict Scripture. You're supposed to be a faithful steward of God's resources, so you've got also both the power and responsibility to ensure that your money supports businesses that honor those biblical principles. All right? That's where our friends at Constitution Wealth come in, because unlike many other advisors, they can specifically screen investments for Christian values, ensuring your money supports businesses that honor God's word, his principles. So don't let your wealth unknowingly fund causes that oppose biblical truth. Take control of your biblical mandate and obligation today by visiting constitutionwealth.com/blaze. You can go there, get a free consultation today. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. And please remember that Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review Constitution Wealth's disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. All investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. I am a client of the firm. This is a paid endorsement, but my opinions are my own. Well, if you go back to our best-selling book in 2023, Rise of the Fourth Reich, and we told the story of those that the system wanted to ignore. Just a sample of the many, too many, who were taken advantage of and suffered greatly at the cost of the scamdemic. One of the most gut-wrenching, soul-crushing stories in our book is the story of Grace Shara. Her father, Scott, joins us now on the show. Again, it's good to see you, brother. How are you?
Well, it's great to see you again, too, Steve. Interestingly, the book was brought up during the trial. During the trial, what happened was the judge disallowed our motions in limine, which, what motions in limine are is both sides file motions with the court to limit certain testimony in the trial. And so we wanted to limit testimony related to the things I've researched after Grace's death, and the judge denied all of those requests. And so the defense was able to bring in the things that I've researched and the things that I've published, including Rise of the Fourth Reich. And, they painted me as a conspiracy theorist to the jury. So I'm glad you brought that up and you're open.
Remind us again the tragic story of Grace that your family had to suffer and endure and still is enduring to this day, Scott.
So if you rewind to the, as you called it, the scamdemic, which I think is a great word for it, I did not know it was a scamdemic at the time. So we were in October of 2021 right now. I was not awake. I had not been a researcher. I was just part of the system. I believed in the system, and we took Grace to the hospital on October 6th of 2021. Grace was 19 years old. She had Down syndrome. We took her to the hospital because we believed that her oxygen saturation, being at 88%, was an emergency. She was not short of breath. We checked her into the hospital under the condition that first I could stay with her, and second of all, they would give her oxygen and a steroid for 3 to 4 days, and as a precautionary measure. Well, first of all, if they would have just done that, Grace would be alive today. And second of all, I was taken out by an armed guard on October 10th, related to what I was seeing in the hospital. But I still did not believe the hospital was not a safe place. Well, ultimately, Grace had 3 overdose events. One was the first day she was in the hospital. This was an overdose on the sedation med called Precedex. She had a second overdose on October 8th. I didn't know any of this, Steve, until I got the medical records. I didn't know any of the meds she was on, none of that. She had a second overdose on October 8th that almost killed her. And then she had a third overdose on October 13th, which did kill her. They combined Precedex, lorazepam, and morphine in a 26-minute window, and they euthanized Grace. Ultimately, when we started screaming to save her, at this point, our daughter Jessica was in the room with Grace, and Grace's numbers were tanking after they gave her morphine, and Jessica was in a panic and called us, and we started screaming to save our daughter. And that's when we learned for the first time that the doctor had put a DNR order on Grace's chart. The nursing staff from outside the room hollered back, "She's DNR," and they refused to come in the room. And we watched Grace die.
Oh, no,
like we
did we
lost
lose
Scott.
Scott's connection there?
We'll try to get him back.
All right, let's try to get him back. And as you were hearing him say there, they were forced at that point to watch.
Got to the point. Oh.
Do we have you back there, Scott?
Yeah, the last thing that we heard was, unfortunately, watched your daughter
you had to
die.
sadly watch Grace die. That's the last thing we heard. If you could pick it up from there, brother. I'm sorry.
Well, boy, I'm sorry about that. So we watched Grace die, and then
I don't think we have a good internet connection with him.
And we just finished.
All right, let's just try all over again to reconnect. Yeah. In the meantime, we have a clip of the trial. All right, we're going to transition there anyway. All right, so I want you to hear about a minute and a half, because this, as far as I know, this is the only case of the ones we've covered on our show or in any of my books that has gotten to this far, to an actual, past a summary judgment and into an actual verdict from a court of law. All right, so here's a sample of that testimony, and we'll try to reconnect with Scott again.
The number of the breaches of standard of care I identify in my reports are too numerous to count, but some of them stand out. One was the manner by which Father Schara was evicted from the hospital and its impact on the outcome in Grace Shara. And I found this to be shameful conduct on behalf of the hospital. The second issue were the breaches of standard of care related to informed consent. And I find it indefensible that this patient was given medications, very dangerous medications, not theoretically dangerous medications, but medications proved by the medical record to be dangerous to this patient without informed consent. The events on the 13th are very difficult to recognize. The repeated administration of Precedex on the 13th was not just a breach of the standard of care. It was insane. The administration of morphine on 10/13 to a patient who was unconscious, unresponsive, had lost her blood pressure, had no palpable pulse, and whose respiratory pattern was screaming to anybody who would look. The administration of morphine in that situation was worst clinical decision I have ever witnessed in over 46 years of medical practice.
That video courtesy of Children's Health Defense. Have we been able to reconnect with Scott?
Let me try to do that again. I'm using the same machine to run Zoom as I am to play that back. So let me try that again.
So just to give you guys a spoiler, hopefully this will work because we're running short on time, but I want to make sure that Scott is able to come in and close the loop if we can. Just to give you guys the spoiler, despite that testimony that you just heard there, under oath in a court of law, a jury heard that and still sided with Ascension Hospital. And I'm just trying to figure out, as someone who wasn't able to cover the trial daily, but we have a young lady who was alive when she went into the hospital and didn't come out alive. As someone very familiar with this case, I'm based on that testimony as a counter, I am struggling to figure out how they came to that verdict. So Scott, thank you. I think we have you back. All right, so we're going to have to skip ahead here, short on time. Okay, so
hopefully this works now. I switched to a different internet source. Go ahead, Steve.
That's okay. So I've filled in more of the blanks of ultimately the demise of your daughter. Sadly, your case. We played a clip of a very compelling, testimony at your trial. Congrats, even on getting that far. A lot of people have tried to get that far. And have not even gotten to the point of getting an ultimate verdict from a court of law. So your family's gotten further than many more have when they've attempted to go down this road of justice. But you did not get final justice in this court. So ultimately, what was the finding here and why?
Well, what the jury decided was that the doctor's expert, so that was Dr. Burdine, our doctor expert, and they brought in 5 doctor experts. And what happens is there becomes this balancing act. One side presents what they call the standard of care, and the other side presents what they call the standard of care. So their experts presented the idea that if you go into a hospital, you're giving implied consent. So the drugs that euthanized Grace were not required to be discussed with us. The overdose events were not required to be discussed with us. And of course, Dr. Burdine said just the opposite. And most importantly, their experts said that a doctor can unilaterally place a DNR on a patient without consent, without a witness, without a signature, and without a DNR bracelet. And of course, Dr. Burdine presented just the opposite. And it is so egregious. Dr. Burdine, who you just watched in that clip, he did not take a penny for doing this work on Grace's case. When he saw the records, he said, I've got to do this. It's a calling. He had never represented a plaintiff historically in all his 46 years. He's only represented doctors and defended doctors, but this is his first case. He represented a plaintiff. But yet all of that, the jury, it's shocking to me. It's shocking to me that a jury would not see themselves in this same position and accept that you turn over all your rights when you go into a hospital and a doctor can unilaterally place a DNR on you. So anyway, in short, that's what the jury decided. One juror stood with us, one of 12. That represents 8%. And I think that's the true measure of our population who is awake to what is really going on, Steve.
I don't even know what to say to you and your family, brother. I don't know what to say. I just, that's just absolutely awful.
Something that I want to make sure people realize, this system was not a system to go into to get justice. We went into it because God called us. And the reality is God, once a decision is done, God knew the verdict before we ever stepped foot in the courtroom, Steve, and the verdict is done. So now what does that mean? It means he called us into that courtroom to do what he always does. And he's in the business of saving souls. And so to realize that the legal system is in bed with the medical system is critical. And, I have a calling to keep speaking out. And so nothing's changed. This is now my responsibility in what I'm supposed to do to honor our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I'm going to keep doing it.
How's your family doing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't get asked very often, but we're each at different levels. I've been processing this and been outspoken for 3.5 years now. My wife sees it as, she just lost Grace another time. Jessica, our daughter, she's probably halfway between us. The kind of a related question is, what would Grace say about this? And it's funny. Somebody asked me that, and I know what she would say. If I could talk to her right now, she would say, God did it, Dad. And he did. Millions of people saw this trial because it was live streamed. So we were able to lift the veil, show what's going on behind the curtain. Thousands of people are going to be saved because of this trial. And then she would say to me, Steve, she'd say, keep going, earthly dad. She called me earthly dad because she knew the difference between her heavenly father and her earthly father. And what I would say back to her, if I could, would be, of course I will, buddy. I'm going to keep going because that's my responsibility. Her death has not been in vain, Steve.
How can people keep up with you, your work, and what you guys are doing on that front to keep going, Scott?
We have a website that has my research posted. As you know, I have my own show, Deprogramming with Grace's Dad, as you were on the show as a guest. And in the upper right-hand corner of the website, ouramazinggrace.net, you'll see a link that says subscribe to our newsletter. I write a regular Substack, and I would appreciate if anybody listening, if you would subscribe to the newsletter. That would be quite helpful for us getting the word out with our mission.
And remind people how to spell the last name, so when they look, they make sure they get the right Scott.
So the last name is Schara, Schara, and the website again is ouramazinggrace.net.
God bless you and your family, brother. If there's anything we can do to help in the future, you know where to find us, okay?
God bless you too, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you. And thanks as well to Children's Health Defense for streaming that trial all over the country as well. Any reaction to that conversation.
His point about this place we knew we weren't going to be able to get ultimate justice is perfectly combined with your question. How did people, the jury, hear that testimony and still come to the conclusion they did? Well, as I've said, have more people, because of everything that's happened regarding COVID, open their eyes to all manner of things within the healthcare world, what it is, vaccinate more? Absolutely. Significantly more? Has the conversation got better? Absolutely. Are the majority all in? Not even close. So that's it. People are very much still flat earthers on this emotionally. They don't want to go there. They want to feel good about what they did, whether it be just lazy and Netflix and chilling it away, or actually being part of the jihad against the unvaccinated. Trust me, this is the magical power of vaccines, like I've told you before.
The system, the healthcare system, is not just broken. I think it's become crystallized to me after that interview that it largely just doesn't really exist. Not for its stated purpose. And it's not so much the healthcare system itself. It's only 1 in 12 jurors heard that testimony. 8%, as Scott said. Only 1 in 12. That's the real broken, or in my terms, non-existent system. Just incredibly heartbreaking. And I was kind of where you ended that interview. I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say.
What you just saw from Scott Schara, I mean, that's just supernatural stuff right there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean the level of dignity he is still able to display, and grace he is still able to communicate. That's just not of earthly origin. You can't do that. You just can't. I mean, it's not even my daughter. Never met Grace, and I'm just, all the old feelings of the first time we interviewed Scott for the book and the first time I heard this story are coming back again, and I'm like, who do we got to hurt for this, right? You just can't do and be what he is right now, given what's happened to him and his family, and handle it with the dignity he is in the natural. You just can't do that. Something supernatural is happening there. Hour 2 is next. All right, we're back here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzen, Aaron McIntire, and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think. Take advantage of the stevedeace.com inbox to do that by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also... please, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, please do this for us as well. If you're a podcast listener, thank you, first of all, for being one of those. You're the biggest segment of our audience, so thank you. Please hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow, and that way you'll know for sure that every time we drop one of these new episodes, it's for sure right there in your podcast feed. And then also, please leave us a 5-star review. Tens of thousands of you have done that. Thank you very much to each and every one of you for each and every one of those. And thank you to Moxie for sponsoring this part of the show. Moxie is your friendly neighborhood pest control expert all over the country. They believe small gestures matter. You know, stuff that often gets overlooked. Closing the gate behind you, wearing shoe coverings, leaving a friendly note, lending a listening ear. Because here's the thing that sets Moxie apart. It's the day-to-day re-engagement with their staff, ongoing training with their staff, not just for the best tech when it comes to getting rid of the pests and critters in your home you don't want, but when it comes to actually giving you the customer service that you deserve. All right? They care about you, your community, and their team members. They want your team members to feel like they're a part of your community as well. That's why they've been a trusted name in home services for 25 years. And they focus on long-term solutions, not patchwork fixes or emotional benefits. They're not going to try to oversell you all the time. All right. So right now, celebrate 25 years in business with Moxie. You can get your first pest control service with them for just $25. You can't beat that. Just use the promo code Steve when you go to moxieservices.com/Steve. MOXIE, moxieservices.com/Steve. Using the promo code Steve, get that service for just $25 at moxieservices.com/Steve using the promo code Steve. moxieservices.com/Steve using the promo code Steve for just $25. Here's one thing I will say on the Bongino front that I think I need to say, because I've recused myself, I can't be objective. But he knows the phone numbers to Megyn Kelly, Glenn Beck, the biggest names in our industry. He could call them and go on their shows and answer the questions people like Megyn Kelly and Glenn Beck are answering. That could be done. He has way more cachet and respect with those kinds of people than Kash Patel and certainly Pam Bondi does. That could be done. Kash Patel apparently knows how to get on Joe Rogan. He could go right back on, answer Joe's questions about this, right? And now what you're seeing is a deflection. Well, no, we're not going to release these kiddie porn tapes. No one ever asked them to release kiddie porn tapes. In fact, we actually just kind of found out recently there were kiddie porn tapes. We thought they were just human trafficking, pretty much either slightly underage, which is not pedophilia. That's not kiddie porn. Okay, that's pederasty. We thought they were trafficking anywhere from 16 to 25-year-old women this entire time. The whole idea that there were like kiddie porn tapes, that came out just like earlier this year. We never talked about. Epstein's been talked about for years. How much has kiddie porn been talked about with this story until recently? Never. Who brought kiddie porn up? They did. That's a misdirection. No one's asking for the release of kiddie porn tapes. No one's asking for the release of tapes of the women who are not kids who were abused and raped and taken advantage of and trafficked. We're asking for the names of who's in those videos, performing these acts with children and performing these acts with these abused women. We're asking why they haven't been prosecuted. Who received kiddie porn from Jeffrey Epstein? That would be a crime. Who filmed it for him? That would be a crime. Why haven't they been prosecuted? Where are their names at? See, everywhere they want to turn here, they're cornered. And it's from a White House that so far has been doing the cornering. And we've all been applauding. So I think we have to ask ourselves the question, why? It's the most obvious question that's being begged. So here for Fake News or Not this week, we're going to ask it. But before we do, I want to make sure we set the stage here. All right? I'm going to walk you through a chain of events here on the show. Just so we can, and this is just a taste, so we can take a stroll down memory lane. All right, let's start here. In fact, let's go to the Wayback Machine of Jeffrey Epstein's. Let's start there. Jeffrey Epstein's first prosecution. And remember, this is when he got the sweetheart deal from the Bush administration at the time. This is from Mike Benz. Some of you may or may not know him. He is a researcher on our side whose acclaim is certainly in stature has grown in the last couple of years. I don't know him. I know of him. No reason he hasn't been on the show other than we get so many requests to get on this show, and I request Todd so many people to put on the show. Sometimes we just forget people. Like we should have booked Tom Fitton once in 10 years, and we just did like a month ago. Okay. All right. So you can kind of put Benz in the Tom Fitton. He's kind of in that category of influencers and researchers on our side. You think that's fair? Yeah. All right. Mike writes, Alex Acosta, the DOJ official who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart deal back in 2008 with George W. Bush, and it was quoted as saying, quote, he was told to back off Epstein because he belonged to intelligence, end quote. That's a quote from Acosta, by the way. Mysteriously had 11 months of DOJ emails to him in that time period mysteriously disappear. No chain of evidence. Let's continue on. This is again from Jason Buttrell, chief researcher for Glenn Beck, who has probably done more successful research than any singular figure in the history of modern conservative media. Do you think that's a fair assumption? No way around it. There's over a minute missing, cut, edited, and it happens right before the wellness check, 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 right before the wellness check. 4 cameras out. Most high-value prisoner in the entire Bureau of Prisons. Leaving him to conclude, what the hell even is this? It's so obvious. It's almost like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This from Sean Ryan. With this clip from Pam Bondi. Does he have the clip embedded in there, Aaron? I can't remember.
Yeah, I saw your appearance at CPAC with Ben and with Ted Cruz. And one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you.
All right. This is, so again, I've got the files. They're on my desk. For those of you that are on X, you may not know the name of the account Election Whiz, but this is one of the most popular anonymous MAGA accounts on the app. Think that's fair? Yeah. And he has this quote, here is this clip of the aforementioned Tom Fitton talking to Steve Bannon about this yesterday.
I got to wonder what is going on at the leadership of the Justice Department and the FBI to allow them to think that statements like as follows. This is a classic. Of course, we're suing for this stuff, right? And so they say the systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So there's a client list, but it's not incriminating, so therefore you can't see it. There was also no credible evidence that found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. Well, give us the incredible evidence. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So they uncovered evidence, but it wasn't enough to predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So you can go line by line and kind of, go through this analysis that I'm going through. It may be unfair or overly critical, but in my view, unless you have the records to back up the conclusions you've drawn in a case such as this isn't worth much.
Let's go next. This is from Luke Rudkowski, who is one of those kind of a James O'Keefe type on X, for those of you, again, who aren't on there as much as those of us who do this for a living. All right, so he's kind of, the JV version of James O'Keefe. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't mean he doesn't do good work, does great work. He just doesn't have quite the following or notoriety that O'Keefe does, but they're in the same space. Watch this.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right?
And I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion of this. Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds. Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed?
Except now they're telling us they have tapes and they won't give them to us. So there's that. So that was Kash Patel talking to Benny Johnson. By the way, props to Benny Johnson. He's one of the few on our side who's actually gotten it right. The term nowadays is actually pederast, not pedophile. We're calling all sex with everybody that's not under the age of, or over the age of 18, pedophilia. That's actually not true. All right. And you know why we changed that? The homosexual movement made us change that. Because they're big on grooming teenagers into homosexuality. So they wanted to get rid of the term pederast because it's traditionally associated with homosexuality, like when the Islamic, the caliphs and the Turks during the Crusades would bring their boy toys with them when they were going to be at the war front for many months and away from their wives and their harems. So they got rid of the term pederast so that it was okay basically for like a gay teacher in a government school to groom a high school sophomore or junior in homosexuality. That's why it happened. But that is actually, Benny Johnson is correct. That is actually the proper term. And I've been pointing that out on this show for how many years now? So Benny's the only other person I've heard use that language correctly. So props to him for asking the correct question. And Kash Patel's answer there in 2023, way different than his answer in 2025. By the way, how did Kash Patel come to any form of celebrity in 2023? He was one of the key people that debunked the Russian collusion narrative. So again, not like he's some stranger to researching narratives and debunking them, right? Let's keep going here. Next, this clip, Alina Habba, who's now a U.S. attorney, all right, talking to Piers Morgan back in February.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Kash and Pam, there will be accountability. So
Alina Habba is now the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. Fairly well-populated area, right? Tri-state area, one of the most densely populated areas in the country, right? Mm-hmm. You would think there would be, given the amount of traffic that went into Epstein Island year after year for well over a decade, you'd think probably somebody that's in that district, right?
Yeah.
That would be under her jurisdiction. She could prosecute, correct?
Likely.
So given what we just heard her say, and hey, did that come across to you like some kind of polished BS answer? Like she had that whole thing rehearsed and was just playing to a crowd? Did that sound like that to you? It didn't sound like that to me at all.
No,
it sounded like she was just kind of speaking of, what she really thought was true. Because we've seen she can do polished and rehearsed, okay, because she was Trump's lawyer all of last year during the New York trial, right? Okay. Did that come across as something that she had completely laid out to completely just, scam us on?
No.
Would that sound like a woman who really thought that that's what she really thought, right?
It did seem so.
Well, she's a U.S. attorney now in the District of New Jersey. I've got to believe at least somebody, camera operator, somebody who helped produce what went on Epstein Island is probably within the tri-state area there of New Jersey, probably under her jurisdiction to be prosecuted, don't you think?
Likely.
So maybe we should get to prosecuting them. Thoughts? Just a suggestion. Gotta throw that out there. Do with it what you will. Let's go to the next clip. Actually, not a clip. It's a headline. Okay. So remember when the guy in New York, holdover from Biden, didn't want to hand over the Epstein files originally? So after Pam did that clip that we went back that Sean Ryan had from February, and remember what there was a holdout, right? We did a show the next day. Why does this guy still have a job, right? Okay. And then Pam went on talking about how there was a holdout, okay? And then here she is now, March 4th, a few weeks later. AG Pam Bondi says FBI delivered, quote, truckload of Epstein files after she put out the hard deadline. Again, who's setting the baseline expectation here? A U.S. attorney named Alina Habba, the director of the Attorney General of the United States. They're the ones setting the expectations levels here. We had no idea. We had no idea what expectations were. They were giving them to us. So that brings us to this. Let's do a greatest hits of all this now. February 21st, 2025, Pam Bondi says the Epstein files are on her desk under review per Trump's directive. February 26th, announced files, including flight logs and names, to be released February 27th, cites victims' privacy for delays. February 27th, releases the phase 1 of the files, 200 plus pages of mostly public documents, hands these binders, infamous binders, to influencers, accuses the FBI of withholding thousands of documents. We were just talking about that, right? That complete and total clown show. February 28th, demands the FBI deliver all Epstein files by 8 a.m., orders probe into withheld documents. March 2nd, Pam Bondi claims the FBI misled her. Says she now has thousands of pages under review. Officials who withheld the documents are fired. March 14th, says she's received a truckload of unreleased documents, no release timeline given. April 28th, covertly recorded saying FBI reviewed, quote, tens of thousands of Epstein videos with children. May 7th, again, let's just stop and say all the videos are just Epstein with children. Where did Epstein get the children? Where did he get them? Epstein went black phone, just drove a truck around the neighborhoods of America, like the movie Black Phone. Just did Operation Johnny Gosh on his own. Just drove around America, just randomly grabbing children. No one helped? The camera was on auto? No one received the videos? Come on, man. May 7th, Pam Bondi publicly states the FBI is reviewing tens of thousands of videos, denies files are missing, and cites victim protection. Now, July 6th, nothing to see here, no victims, no client list. So we put this together before we actually saw Glenn's ace researcher Jason Buttrell's analysis and points. We put this segment together before we saw that. He's taken this to the other level. He's looked at the schematics of the prison that Epstein was in, where cameras were at, and just pointed out this isn't feasible. This isn't real. Which now has the patriarch of our company, Glenn Beck, saying Pam Bondi has to be fired for this. And this is the worst rollout of information I've ever seen. So I think in light of, it was funny. Some grifter tried going after me for being critical of the Epstein rollout. All you do is rip Trump. So they went to Grok. Asked Grok, Musk's AI. Is it true that point out how many times Steve Deace does nothing but criticize Trump? And Grok's AI came back with, actually, we counted at least 23 posts this year on our site where Steve Deace was effusive in his praise for the president's handling and then went off on very specific issues. There is a clear line of demarcation in the level of execution and discipline and messaging where this is concerned and the Department of Justice is concerned compared with the entirety of the rest of this presidency in the first 7 months. It's glaring. It's impossible to ignore. So I think that begs the question, why? One thing I'm very concerned about, as someone that has been among the most aggressive people on the right pushing back against the rising trash of anti-Semitism on our side, do you want to recruit more Nick Fuenteses? You want to come up with an entire new engagement farm of alt-right nationalists? Don't tell us the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. Force people to fill in the blanks themselves. And I can promise you the blank they're going to fill in, number one, more than anything else, Mossad asset. And of course, we're controlled by the Jews, which doesn't help. When the most high-profile Jew in American media, Ben Shapiro's out there saying, you're right, guys, whole thing, my wife's a doctor and also told me that the whole thing looks like it's on lockdown, guys. Moving on. When it doesn't stand up to even cursory questioning. This is like an anti-Semites engagement. And this isn't, dude, Candace Owens right now is like, somebody get me a towel. I got a towel off here. This is an anti-Semitic engagement farmers nocturnal emission, the way this is being handled. It checks every box. Because it doesn't stand up to even surface levels of scrutiny. And we all know it. So, gentlemen, I now turn this over to you. Try to make sense of this, if it can be.
Well, the fact that it doesn't make sense, and they've shown heightened level of competence on multiple high-stakes fronts, yet they're doing this, should tell you that this isn't just Keystone Cops, that there's a plan with this too, and that's pretty dark. But listen, neither party, whether they're in the majority or the minority, is willing to make hay out of this, short of talking points memo. You'll see these people craven on both sides. They will flip opinions and then execute on those opinions, but not in this case. This is too dark. Everybody here knows that pulling on these threads is going to cause a level of chaos, perhaps. And instead, you'd think the one who finally does it is going to be the hero. I think, oh man, I know. You have no idea the collateral damage. There's no heroes. This thing is a nuclear bomb. It takes us all out, and we just need to move on. And listen, Trump, I've said this in a funny way before. I just got done saying it earlier. I'll say it again. The thing, yeah, the big beautiful bill. He puts words on these things. Of course, if we want to, we can call it this giant mess, and there's going to be stuff that you don't like in that. But no, this is the way of moving things, and we agreed on this show to some degree. In order to execute on all kinds of other issues, we do need to move on. I don't believe that about the Epstein list, but I think it's probably likely that almost everybody in D.C. does. We can't let this out. We have no idea what happens here. It's like pulling the pin on a million grenades. That's really, really dark, but that's the world we live in. And the next Netflix and chill crowd will probably accept it. But I think that's the Occam's razor answer to all this. And we're never going to know unless somebody truly decides to go rogue, and I'll probably risk life and limb to do it.
If it were actually true that the narrative that memo spun is the reality, wouldn't you think that an administration who has shown messaging prowess and discipline and unity for the last 6 months, don't you think that they would recognize, hey, there's a huge expectation. Some of our most ardent supporters and outspoken supporters have really raise the expectation level of what this report is going to produce. This is going to be an unbelievable, to them, letdown if we just produce this. We need to come out here a little bit more carefully, a little bit more piecemeal and patchwork, massage the language a little bit more, actually make this, with a spoonful of sugar, easier to digest. No, that's not what they're doing. That's what's so disturbing about this. Yesterday, it's Caroline Leavitt saying this is transparency. We asked them to do a comprehensive report. It's done. We're moving on. Both Bondi and Trump just moments ago pushing back very heavy-handedly against questions about this report, this memo, and saying, again, it's time to move on. The way that they're doing this is just so bizarre when held up against everything else that we've seen from this administration. So the way, I'm just telling you right now, the way that they're going about this, even if it's true, absolutely true, doesn't make any sense, but even if it's true, is going to cause this to be an even bigger story moving forward.
Correct.
You want to talk about pulling pins on grenades, you're pulling a pin on a nuclear neutron bomb within your base because of the way that they're going about this.
Correct.
So that's this. We might, if they had come out here, messaged this in a more digestible way, and just or even said, this is unknowable. This is unknowable. The Biden administration, their Biden Department of Justice for 4 years had access to a bunch of evidence. We don't know what we have, what we don't have. The answers to your questions are unknowable, and I'm sorry for that. If they would have come out that way, instead of he killed himself, there was no blackmail, we're moving on, please stop asking us about this, that's going to continue to blow up in their face.
I think I'm going to make an executive decision. We're going to move the Pop Culture Tuesday segment at overtime. You guys okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. On the survey results of the state of American manhood in 1970 compared to 2024. Okay. Here's the thing. I tried to come up with something that wasn't sinister. And I'm going to lay it out there as a tease and let you guys have the break to think about it and then react, okay? The only thing I could come up with is that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel just got caught being complete and total BS grifters, perpetuating talking points for profit. And then they got in there and realized they were in way over their skis, spoke out of school. No one likes to admit they're wrong. No one wants to admit, hey, I was just selling you talking points you wanted for clicks. And now they're left with a terrible explanation. But here's why I don't believe that. Because if there was even a slight possibility that Dan was doing that, he doesn't take this job. Because he doesn't risk this coming out. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
He doesn't risk, if that's the thing. That's why I don't believe he's a grifter. Because do the math, then you just stay where you were. You keep the racket going. The gravy train rolling. I think Dan's broadcast company has made more money the first 6 months of this year or last year. What do you think? I think we probably all know the answer to that. When he's on the air compared to when he's not. What do you think? Okay? Like, I don't even know who's hosting the show in his place. Couldn't tell you a guy's name. I know some dude got hired. I don't know the dude's name. Couldn't tell you. I don't know. I work in the business. I don't know who it is. So I don't think it's that. Because a lot of people are suggesting that in my feed. But if that's the case, if you're Dan Bongino, you just stay where you're at, man. You don't come out from behind the microphone and put on the shirt and the suit and the tie, where now you could get exposed in ways that you could not before. You don't risk that exposure. Do we agree on that to some degree?
Yeah.
See, now that is why I am out of benign innocent explanations, because that's the only one I can think of. People just got greedy, talking out of their rear end, and got caught, with their pants down. But if that's the case, you just stay where you are. You know that's the case, and just stay where you are. You don't come out where people are going to see the nakedness. So I'm out of benign innocent explanations. Let's discuss where that goes from there next. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at Raycon. More warmth means more light, more time to spend outside. Summer is the time to be out and about. This time of year with 75 hard, I'm like walking 40 plus miles a week. Lots of time for me to put the Raycons in. Enjoy my favorite podcast and crystal clear sound while I'm out and about. You can do so as well all day long with their everyday earbuds by Raycon. They're the perfect summer accessory, whether you're going hard at the gym, enjoying the sun, taking those work calls outside, maybe just jamming while barbecuing to your favorite tunes out there on the deck. 32-hour battery life in their latest model. Multi-point connectivity that lets you pair two devices at once. And then speaking of battery, don't forget their quick charge function. That's just 10 minutes of charging, yields 90 minutes of battery. And these earbuds come with the best active noise cancellation I've ever heard. All right, so go to buyraycon.com/Steve and get 15% off right now and get that off their best-selling everyday earbuds. That's right now at Raycon, Raycon. Raycon, 15% off their best-selling everyday earbuds right now only at buyraycon.com/Steve. That's buyraycon.com/Steve. Okay. So, the only possible benign, innocent explanation for this I could come up with, that you guys have had time to think about it, is that Kash was just selling stuff, selling himself to raise his profile, to get on shows like Benny Johnson's and others, telling our base what it wants to hear. After Dan's show went supersonic, because it's a race between him and Mark Levin about who first broke the fact that the Clinton administration, the Obama administration was spying on Donald Trump via the FISA warrant program. It's a race between those two to see who broke the story first. And that took Dan Bongino. And 10 years ago, Dan Bongino was doing Facebook Lives literally from a closet in his home. All right? And now he's one of the biggest stars in the history of our movement because he was one of the leaders, put it all on the line, risking all of his credibility over the Russia collusion hoax, was proven correct, all right? And already had all the engagement you can want, all the money you could want. He's a major investor in Rumble. He's a multi-millionaire, all right? But chose to put it all on the line, okay, by just tripping over his own phallus to get another layer of engagement clicks he doesn't need by overextending himself with a bunch of BS to our base on Epstein. Okay, that's to me the only possible benign, innocent explanation here. And then they just got caught. Except if that, number one, Dan didn't need more money. Number two, if he was doing that, he wouldn't have taken the job. He would have stayed where he's at and just kept the gravy train rolling, right? So to me, I gave you guys the break to think about it. There are no other benign, innocent explanations to this. I cannot think of any potential ones beyond the theory, the hypothesis I just gave out, which I think doesn't pass rudimentary. If it was just Kash, you might get me to buy that, but not where Dan's concerned. He didn't need any of that. Dan had the money to walk away from Fox News, guys. 99.99999999999% of the people in this business, their number one goal is to get to Fox News one day. Dan just walked away. So he didn't have to do that. Maybe Kash Patel does to get known. He doesn't. So you guys had the break. Can you think of any other benign, innocent explanation possibilities before we move on to the darker stuff that you talked about?
Yeah.
You can. Go ahead.
Yeah. That he really did kill himself. That reports of his blackmail operation really were overblown. And basically the entire narrative. That is the benign, innocent explanation. Here's the problem, though. The explanation... Whom would we trust to give that explanation?
Correct.
Okay. And then if that is indeed the explanation, the way that they are unfurling this right now is not exactly building any confidence back. It's not exactly building any form of rapport between the American people and these agencies at all. We're basically being told, F you, we're moving on. That is not the way that you restore the credibility of anything, anyone, or any institution. So this might be true. It might be true, guys. Everything that in that memo. But the way they're rolling this out is poop. And we're going to need a little bit more explanation than that. And I will just say, you invoked his name, so I'm going to as well. I saw the video of Ben Shapiro this morning as well. Said, well, if you disagree with the DOJ, then you're free to bring your own evidence. Where would we get that evidence?
What evidence have they presented? What evidence have they presented?
Exactly. I know
video with missing footage and camera angles that don't show the cell?
It might have flown 20 years ago. For the NRO types, the establishment types, this is what you believe now. We're moving on. You believe it, take it or leave it, we're moving on. That might have flown 20 years ago. It's not going to fly in the year 2025. A lot of people have their reputations at stake here, including people very close to the president who have made comments either deliberately or off the cuff for years now about the Epstein list, and you're making them all look like fools. And you're doing it in a way that is not establishing any sort of rapport or credibility with these agencies that have already completely tanked their own credibility. I mean, at the very least, come out and say, hey, like I said last segment, we're not totally sure what happened here. The Biden administration, Biden DOJ, had the access to this evidence for years. We don't know what they messed with, what they didn't mess with. Really, it's unknowable what happened. You could have done that. People would have still been upset, but I think there would have been a lot more grace given, because there's none of that right now with a lot of people.
Here's why, with all due respect, I don't think your possible benign innocent explanation holds.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
But I because nothing makes sense from what we've been told.
You have to look at what Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were charged with. All right. They were charged with enticement of minors to travel to commit illegal sex acts. Okay. Travel to see whom? Who was getting them to travel? Was Epstein picking them all up himself? Ghislaine Maxwell was the chauffeur who did the driving. You see what I mean? The things that they were charged, that Epstein was charged with, and that Maxwell was convicted of, are not singular acts of malfeasance. They, at the very least, imply co-conspirators or third parties that would be on the receiving end of their malfeasance. Can you think of anything benign, innocent before we get to some of the darker stuff that you alluded to? You're good?
Well, I'm not good.
Okay. So, what did you say to me during the break? I you know what? When you said it to me during the break, Aaron, I thought, yeah, I did notice that too. Caroline Leavitt wears a cross almost every single day.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a time. I'm sure someone's going to point out a day or 12 that she didn't, but it's pretty standard in her wardrobe, right? Wasn't wearing one yesterday when she gave that cockamamie statement on Epstein. By the way, notice that you didn't have the typical smile and chummy, polish that she usually comes to the table with.
There was no sassiness.
No, there was none of that. None of that swag that Caroline typically has either. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm not a body language expert and I don't know Caroline Leavitt. I'm just saying that performance doesn't line up with what we've typically seen for the last 6 months, whether she's clashing with the media or just giving, good trade news. All right. To me, well, let's deal with let's deal with the two elephants in the room. All right. So that so that all righteousness is fulfilled and we don't end up becoming, condemned by our own standard. Let's go ahead and deal with the two elephants in the room. Like when Elon Musk had his first tantrum against Trump a month ago, Trump is on the list, and that's why they don't want to release it. All right. I have long believed that if he were on the list, the Democrats would have found a way to implicate him. Now, the counter to that is, well, mutually assured destruction. My problem with that as a counter, can you point out to me where the Democrats have been concerned about mutually assured destruction in the culture political war, like in the last decade, where they haven't gone somewhere, done something, ramped something up, amped something up, because they were concerned about how we were going to respond if they did. You know what I'm saying? Not to mention, I kind of think the people that conducted a fake presidency right in front of us and then gaslit us about it for 4 years, and then when we finally all figured it out, just did an outright coup and put someone in place who didn't win a single primary in his place. I kind of think they'd just throw Bill Clinton overboard to get Donald Trump if they thought it would do it for him. Is that a fair analysis? I mean, I can't say for 100% that this would not be a unique case of mutual assured destruction, so they let it go, okay? But it would be, I can say for 100%, it would have to be so extreme, it goes completely against their MO of the last decade or so. Including where Trump's is concerned, where they tried to freaking shoot him, okay?
Well, that's the point. If mutually assured destruction just means losing in politics, they're willing to do that, but what if the ante is up? This is my point. It's like no one can figure out how to get advantage of this thing politically when they've been willing to go to all kinds of lengths on I think this is clearly a nuclear bomb, and
all right, we're gonna get there.
Okay. Well,
let's just take these one by one as the reason why it's a nuclear bomb.
No,
right?
I'm saying, so to your point, I still think it is possible that he is on a list.
Let's do this: possible, unlikely, likely.
Possible.
Okay? You think it's possible? What do you think, Aaron? I would say unlikely, but what do you say?
Unlikely.
Okay. All right. The next thing, okay? Somebody close to the administration, a major GOP donor. No, actually, that's not the second thing. Let's deal with the other second elephant in the room. Jeffrey Epstein, Mossad asset. It was being used by Israeli intelligence to accumulate a massive amount of blackmail on people of domestic and global import to be used by Israeli intelligence against them later on. And look at the timing of this. After Trump goes ahead and breaks ranks with much of his own MAGA movement and joins the Israelis in bombing the Iranians to smithereens, he follows that up with nothing to see here, where Jeffrey Epstein, it's not Jeffrey Smith, all right, it's not Jeffrey McIntire, all right, Epstein is concerned. We all know what that name denotes, okay? So that's what's going on here, and Trump is essentially doing what a good the swamp creature in the end does, all right? You bow the knee to AIPAC and Israeli Jewish interests.
Well, I don't think it would be bowing to their interests. It would be bowing to the reality of, for the sake of playing this out, the reality of insane levels of collateral damage that make it impossible to govern afterwards if they're exposed. So, yeah, is this possible? Sure.
Aaron?
Possible, yep.
I'm going to say this is possible, too, but not for the Zionist conspiracy. Possible that... I do think it is possible he was some kind of a foreign agent and even used by Israeli intelligence. And given the tenuous state of play in that region of the world, the collateral damage of that coming out would just feed a frenzy within Trump's own base that he would prefer this fight over that one. I think that's possible. Right. Meaning, what I mean by that is, no, I don't think, Nick Fuentes is my boy, 27. Okay. I don't think AIPAC called Trump and he picked up and said, the guy that was dropping Shylock last week and got, I'm sure, I don't think that's the guy that took the bat phone, okay, from AIPAC and said, oh crap, guys, the Zionist bosses have called. I don't think that's what happened. But in another context, could this be possible? Where there is some intelligence asset, actual credibility there, and exposing that at this given time, given how sensitive that whole thing is within the MAGA base, the relationship with Israel is that's just more of a mountain than Trump wants to climb right now. So he'd just see if he could just dismiss it first. I think that is possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Possible, likely, unlikely. At least one prominent GOP figure, donor, politician who is still active or has direct ties to somebody who is still active is implicated in these materials and in this relationship. And the same amount of collateral damage concerns exist. And so therefore the kibosh is being put on this. And they're hoping to just ride it out and make this go away rather than risk this becoming a matter of internal turmoil within the Republican Party. Possible, likely, or unlikely?
Oh, likely, but you're not thinking big enough. I mean, the numbers here might be just so vast. And we live in a culture...
Meaning it could be several.
So many people on both sides of the thing, again, with intelligence, FBI, our own side up to their eyeballs and manipulating that and where that goes. Yes, I think that, of course, that is likely. And in a sex star, we trans the kids. We clap at track meets with it's a depraved world. So
I think this one is likely too. Aaron?
Yes.
So then you have to ask. That begs a follow-up question. Who would be such of high value, or what kind of figure would be of such a high value? Because Trump has his own unique coalition, kind of. Sometimes he plays nice with the Republican Party, sometimes he doesn't. But he doesn't need. Dude, he didn't even use the Republican Party to get out the vote in the last election. All right, he's outsourced it to all of his own interests. So then, right? Like I don't think like. Rhino red state senator from Acme, because there's a million of them, just pick a name, is on there. You think Donald Trump's doing all this for that guy?
I don't know. It's not. It's
probably not.
It's not any one individual. It's the combination of individuals, money, and power, and moral debaseness that a lot of them, if they're going to this island and they get caught, they're going to kill you if you out them. They're going to kill anybody.
Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were innocent. And Maxwell should be released from prison by close of business today. Possible, unlikely, likely. I think this is the unlikely of the unlikeliest of them all.
Unlikely.
Yeah. Is there a scenario here that I did not ask about that should be entertained in the last 30 seconds we have?
I don't think so.
You know, ultimately, we are a biblical worldview show. So, our sins have a way of finding us out. That applies in the micro and in the macro. Something to keep in mind. Back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.